Well, it's out of the garbage for the duration of the video, but then it's going right back into the Apocrypha. Welcome to my first rant review. Why did I think that reading this book was a good idea? Full disclaimer, before we begin, like the usual stuff in front of a rant video. If you loved this book, good for you. I'm glad you did. I'm glad it entertained you. If you feel like your feelings might get hurt by me ranting about it, then please leave, because there's not going to be a lot of nice things said about it. Honestly, quite often in my life, I heard people talk about the books that I love and say that they're boring, that they're pointless, they don't make any sense. And look at me. I'm fine. So let's just move on. Why did I think that I was going to like another book by Alex Michaelides after The Silent Patient? I have no idea. Probably the promise of ancient Greek history embedded into the story kind of seduced me. Plus, I love a good thriller and people were loving this, but I don't know. Am I going to read another book by him?
Oh, hell no!
Oh my God. Okay, I just know that I'm gonna have to edit so many sighs and swear words out of this video. Okay, this is a thriller about Mariana Andros. That's her maiden name. I don't remember her married name. Her husband died a year ago. He drowned and she's completely engulfed in her grief. That part was done really well. I could really feel how sad and incredibly broken by this loss she was. That was done really well. She is a group therapist and holds these groups in her living room every week. There's a patient that's obsessed with her, and you feel in the beginning like that's gonna be a big part of the story. One day, Mariana gets a call from her niece Zoe, who studies at Cambridge at the same college where she and her husband Sebastian were. She calls her in tears, saying that they found a murdered girl's body on campus, and she's sure that it's her best friend Tara, because Tara didn't come home last night. So Mariana cancels all her sessions and everything, and she goes to Cambridge to help Zoe through this, to support her, and to, for some reason, try to help with the investigation, because she feels like she can do that. When she comes there, she quickly discovers that there is already a person there who she suspects. She's 100% sure that this person did it, and she begins to investigate and push this onto everybody. She immediately begins her own investigation, even though the police constantly tell her to stay out of it, obviously. And the Greek history part of this is that there's this charismatic young professor who's American. This is happening in England, so he's like, this exotic thing, who teaches literature and teaches a lot about Greek tragedy. He has these 6 girls who everybody calls the Maidens, that just follow him around like little ducklings, and they hold these private consultations in his chambers, and it's all very secretive and it's all very elitist, because these girls are like daughters of ministers, and one of them is like a princess or something. They are rich and popular and beautiful and cold, and the kind of bitches that you'd hate, right? So Mariana and Zoe immediately think that it's something to do with the Maidens and with this professor. They start to investigate. I feel like I immediately want to dive into the spoilers. If that sounds interesting to you, maybe you should go and read it. Maybe you'll love it. If you feel like you just want to stay here for the rant, excellent. Pull up a chair, get some tea, because my throat already hurts. But if you want to read it and then come back, that's fine too. Now let's dive into the spoilers. Okay, so first things first. I don't understand why it is presented as if every single male character in the book is so infatuated with Mariana. She's never described, because I feel like this is sort of like fan service, because her appearance is never described. You don't know what her hair color is, what her eye color is. It feels like Mariana is a placeholder for the reader to put themselves in, so that all of these men could be infatuated with her. I didn't understand that part at all. Now, let's just go through the plot, and I'll tell you all my gripes as we go through it. So the book starts with her holding a weekly group session with her patients. One of the patients, Henry, is kind of obsessed with Mariana, and he's quite unstable. He should actually be getting much more help than he's getting from her. And he's kind of clingy. She's been trying to kind of distance herself from him and move him to another therapist for a very long time. But he's been trying to give her gifts, standing outside her house, looking at it, and she's kind of scared of him. And at the beginning of the book, right after the session where he makes everybody mad, he pulls up his sweater and shows her these scars that he put on himself. She gets scared and kicks him out. And I already at that moment felt I don't know if Alex Michaelides actually knows anything about psychotherapy, psychology, and that kind of line of work, because from the way his characters, who are medical professionals in the psychology and psychiatric field, they act as if he just like read the Wikipedia page for it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like you're a specialist in that area. You can tell me if I'm wrong. But it just feels like if my patient showed me that he was hurting himself, I feel like you need to be a little bit more proactive. Wouldn't you call somebody? Wouldn't you get him more help? Not just group therapy once a week where you just like all talk about your feelings in a circle. That's great. But when he's hurting himself, stalking you outside your house, that's not okay. Like, you're not supposed to let that go on. And I understand that at the same time, she's experiencing this tremendous grief over the loss of her husband, and it's muddling her vision. But it's not shown very well as if that's the reason, as if there's a reason. It's just like, she's just like, oh, well, I should have done something about Henry, but I didn't. Moving on. You know, okay. Right. At the same time, when she goes to the college, we are experiencing diary entries from the murderer, who tells us of his childhood, grew up on a farm, all alone, and the father was a dick, and there's all of this trauma. Mariana gets to the college to her niece's aid. The niece is a complete mess. She lost her friend. Mariana tries to support her. She gets a room on campus because she's an alum, and they give her a room. Her old professor is still there. She goes to see her a few times and just talk with her. And the atmosphere of the college was pretty well made. Who are the Maidens? We meet them for the first time at the memorial service for Tara. It's this beautiful chapel on campus where everybody meets, and Mariana sees this professor, Edward Fosca, who's this American guy, come in, followed by these young, beautiful women, all wearing white. And Zoe tells her that these are the Maidens, his like elite group of students who he teaches privately in his chambers. And they mostly study like Greek tragedy. After the memorial service, Mariana discovers that the forensic psychologist who works on this case is actually somebody she went to university with. And his name's Julian, I think. Julian's also like in love with Mariana. He constantly tries to ask her out, you know, flirt with her. He's kind of sleazy, but he keeps doing it. And she rejects everybody because she's still in love with her husband. She cannot let go of his memory. And it's understandable, but I still don't understand why so many different men needed to be shown to flirt with her and to try to get with her in order to underline how much she's still in love with her husband. I feel like just one dude and one rejection would have been enough. I don't know, maybe that's just me. On the train to Cambridge, she also met this other guy named Fred, I don't even remember, let's say Ted, who is a student at college. He's like 6 or 8 years younger than her, and he keeps trying to ask her out, and he keeps trying to help her with the case. He's a little bit strange, but she feels at some point like he's the only guy she can really trust. She starts to investigate Edward Fosca with the help of Zoe, Clarissa, who's her old professor, and this Fred guy. The inspector who investigates this hates Mariana because she keeps poking her nose in the case. She keeps going where she's not supposed to. She keeps speaking to students, like telling them, oh, the dean made me talk to you. He thought that a psychotherapist talking to students after this traumatic event would be good. So she like lies to people to get her information, which is understandable in her state of mind. But at the same time, the police inspector hates her for it, obviously. She butters up one of the betters. Betters are women that live next to the college and are paid to like come and clean the rooms, change the sheets and stuff like that. And they're like a staple of the college. So she befriends kind of like the better that was Tara's better, so she can go into her room and snoop around. And she doesn't find anything. And then like, you know, like a hunch out of nowhere, out of thin air, when she's almost coming out of the room, she just turns and sees this postcard on the mirror. And she goes, and it's a postcard with a painting of a Greek tragedy. She turns it over and there's something written in ancient Greek. So she goes to Clarissa and she asks for a translation. Clarissa translates it, and it's a stanza from an ancient Greek tragedy about a young woman being murdered in the same way that Tara was murdered. Mariana tries to talk to the Maidens. They're obviously very rude. They don't want to talk to her, and they hate her because she suspects Professor Fosca. So they are very cold towards her. They don't want to give her any information. But at the same time, when she invites them for tea, they're like sitting in a bar drinking something. Because she was like, oh, I'll pay. And these rich girls are like, oh, you'll pay, then we'll go. They're rich. They don't care. They don't need her to pay. So they go with her of a promise of a free Guinness. These princesses, these ministers' daughters, they're talking and she's trying to get some kind of information out of them. And they're incredibly cold. They're just stonewalling her, don't want to tell her anything. And then one of them gets a text and she's like, oh, sorry, gotta go, like I have a meeting. And the other one is immediately like, ooh, is that your secret admirer? And she goes, I don't have a secret admirer. And she turns to Mariana and she goes, she's got a secret admirer. It's been like for weeks she gets these texts and then she disappears. Bitch, you just didn't want to talk to her. What the hell? I don't understand. Like, that kind of exposition, just like giving us information from a character who just didn't even want to acknowledge your existence, giving you this information out of the blue. Because like, oh, let's gossip. I fucking hate you, but let's do this. Come on. Really? And there's a bunch of little moments like that where characters act inconsistently. Like, I understand people in real life act inconsistently quite a lot. But when you hate somebody, you're stonewalling them because they are accusing your favorite professor of murder, and you don't even want to be there and talk to them. And the only reason you're sitting there is because they promised you a free beer and because you kind of think that the dean made them. And then you divulge this information of your own free will. Why? Fine, moving on. Right, so next day, this girl who got a text message, can't even remember her name, she gets murdered as well in some horrible way. And of course, Mariana also finds a postcard with another picture of some Greek tragedy element and some more ancient Greek on the back. She goes to Clarissa. Clarissa translates it, and it's another stanza from a Greek tragedy describing the way this girl was murdered. I don't remember what tragedy. The way she was murdered was horrific, but it doesn't even matter. Clarissa is a very pleasant character. She's this old professor lady. She's got her own rooms, and I just like imagine them, like in dark paneled walls, with dark leathery furniture. And she constantly smokes a pipe, which is a habit she picked up from her husband, which I think is a cute detail. I kind of like that. And she helps Mariana translate these things and kind of like put her thoughts in order. But at the same time, she just kind of sits there and goes, well, I don't know. You're a senior professor in this college, and when Mariana comes to her saying that, I think this guy, this Professor Fosca, did it. I think he's killing his special students, and I'm pretty sure he's sleeping with them. Clarissa just goes, well, I don't know, he's such a respected young man. I mean, I kind of understand it, but when murder is happening on campus, I feel like people should be taking this stuff more seriously. But then again, I mean, it's easy to judge for me because stuff like that isn't happening, right? I don't know how I would have acted in a situation like that, but it was annoying to be. Mariana and Zoe go to the lecture of Professor Fosca to kind of, look at him, study him a little bit, see what he's teaching at his class. He's incredibly popular. People are like queuing outside his classroom and just like standing on the stairs just to listen to him. He's incredibly charismatic. At the beginning of the lecture, he gives some credit, talks about Tara, how we lost one of our friends, and then he talks about his subject. He talks about the cult of Demeter and Persephone and the Elusinian Mysteries, which was a ritual that happened in ancient Greece, ancient, like before the Hellenic culture. A lot of contemporaries, ancient Greek writers, wrote about these mysteries because they were participants, but the thing about them was that they were a complete mystery. Everybody who participated had to swear that they will never, ever tell anybody what happened there under threat of death. And surprisingly, nobody ever did, so we don't actually know what happened there. We only know that people prepared for the rite for 6 months, and then on the day that the rite began, they marched from Athens to Elysian, just on foot. They just walked there. And in Elysian, there was a temple called Phalestrion, which was dedicated to Demeter. The story goes that Demeter, after her daughter Kore was stolen by Hades into the underworld, we all know this story. Demeter didn't know what happened to her daughter. Nobody told her. And she just started to look for her all over the world. She appeared in the city of Elysian in the guise of an old woman. The city took her in. There's another version that she became a nanny for the queen's son and tried to make him immortal and eternally young, but the queen prevented her from doing this. And after that, Demeter revealed herself as the goddess that she was and made them build her a temple and retired into it. Another story is that she just came into the city looking for Kore, and the town tried to help her. They took her in, they took care of her. After 9 days, because she was so grateful to them, she still haven't found her daughter, but she was grateful. She revealed herself as the goddess she was. They built Thelestrion. I keep saying Thelestrion, it's Telesterion. I don't know what was wrong with me. And she retired into it. So the rites were happening in Thelestrion. Nobody knows what actually happened once the people who were prepared for it went into Thelestrion. The only thing that we know is that before the rites, the people were given this drink called Kikeon, which was supposedly that contained some kind of hallucinogenic drug in them. But again, there's no conclusive proof that that happened. After ingesting that drink, we don't know what happened. Things were done, things were said, acts were performed. There are suspicions. Again, this is conjecture. This is just suspicions. People making assumptions. Historians making assumptions. That there were acts of murder and to kind of act out the abduction of Kore and her becoming Persephone. The murder of a young girl was supposed to be like her coming from the world of the living into Hades, into the underworld, and then her is, I don't need to explain. There is conjecture that horrible acts were performed. Something could have happened to living people. We don't know what. There's a lot of speculation, but no records, no anything like that is saved to our day. There are records of contemporaries who took part, like Plutarch, for example, right? He was a participant. He wrote about it a little bit, but then again, he did not disclose any detail because he made a promise. There's also a suspicion that if there were any kind of records, any kind of evidence in the Thelestrion, anything that could have given us any idea of what was actually happening inside the temple during the mysteries, they were probably all destroyed 2,000 years ago by Alaric, the king of the Goths, to suppress the Hellenic resistance to the Christianity on the rise at that time. So we don't actually know what happened inside the temple, but we do know all the preparations and everything surrounding those rites. What happens in this book is that Edward Fosca talks a lot about these mysteries. He talks about them in this lecture, and Mariana is incredibly suspicious because this all just sounds like rotten fish. She thinks that he did it, that he performed the rites with the girls, and then he did it, and everything points to him. He doesn't like the fact that she suspects him, obviously, so he invites her for dinner at his chambers. For some reason, she agrees. I kind of understand why she would agree. She wants to investigate him. She wants to look into his chambers. Maybe she'll find something there. She just wants to talk to him and feel him out, see maybe if she was wrong about him. When she goes to his chambers, she looks into one of his books while he's pouring wine or something and sees underlined the passages that were on one of the postcards sent to the murdered girls. She is a little bit drunk off the wine, but she immediately leaves, even though he's been flirting with her and stuff and been charming, and she thinks he's gonna make a move, and I don't want this murderer to make a move. After the traumatic dinner with Fosca, Mariana decides to get some outside help. She contacts her, it's like she's her therapist, but she was also her trainer when she was in training as a therapist. So her supervisor. She goes to this older woman to get some advice. She tells her the whole story. And this woman tells her that maybe you need some advice from somebody from your class who is actually working with criminal psychology. So she has her contact Theo from The Silent Patient, who is the main character of The Silent Patient. She talks to Theo. He helps her get some perspective on the whole case and on Fosca's psychology. And after that, she goes back to Cambridge. She's sure he did it. She needs to investigate more. She needs to convince people that he did it. And she's being super annoying while she's at it. When she gets back to Cambridge, a couple things happen. One night, she follows Morris, the porter at the dorms where she's staying, who's a super nice guy. He's the grandson of the porter who used to work there when she was a student. She loves him. She follows him around campus and finds that he goes to this abandoned graveyard, and she sees him have sex with one of the maidens. And she, for some reason, understands that he must be blackmailing Fosca. Can somebody explain that to me? Am I just dumb? Or does that make no sense? Morris is sleeping with one of the maidens, and is blackmailing Fosca with the information that he himself is sleeping with one of his students? What? Like, it's never explained. It's never said. What is he blackmailing him with? Maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe just like missed something. But if you read this as well, maybe you can explain to me. What is he blackmailing him with? So Morris sees her seeing them, and he's immediately like super nasty. She's scared of him. She goes back to the dorms, and it turns out that she was followed by Henry, her patient from back in London, who tried to hurt himself, and he like tries to kill himself in front of her. He talks to her and he goes like, "You don't care about me, you abandoned me, you like a shitty psychiatrist." And I'm just sitting there thinking, yeah, Henry, you tell her. Like, Henry's not right in the head, but he's not wrong. She did not give him the help that he needed. So he pulls out a knife and like tries to kill himself or then attack her, but she's saved by Morris. Nothing is ever said about this again. They put him in the hospital on campus, and that's it. Forget about it. Forget about it. That just does not have any place in the further story at all. It was like there was just like one light bulb moment for her when she just goes, "Oh yes, I did abandon him. I abandoned my patients to take care of myself." Yeah, girl, sometimes you do need to do that. You didn't just abandon them. You told them that you were going away. You substituted for your own group therapy with another therapist, which is a thing that's done sometimes because we're all people. And she feels like it's been some kind of revelation for her. So after that, after Henry attacks her, she also gets a postcard in a black envelope with the Greek writing on the back. She feels like she doesn't even need a translation. She goes to Clarissa anyway to show her and talk to her and get some advice. So Clarissa's still like smoking her pipe, going, "I don't know." But while they're talking, it's like raining and all very dramatic. Zoe comes in and she goes, "I just got a postcard as well." So Mariana immediately is super scared. She goes, "Look, I need to take you to London. We need to be away from here. We need to be safe because he's gonna kill you next." Clarissa is very supportive of this. She's like, "You gotta leave. You need to take yourself out of the situation. Let the police do their thing. Stop poking your nose where it doesn't belong." And Zoe just says, "Okay, I'm gonna go take a shower and then we're gonna talk about this," because Zoe doesn't want to leave. Mariana decides that she's gonna convince her to leave anyway. She goes to her dorm room to wait for Zoe to return. And while Zoe's like taking her time in the shower, she starts to like look around the room. She just thinks about the little kid that Zoe was, how Sebastian helped her raise her when Zoe lost her parents, and how they were like this little family and how happy they all were together. And she like sits on the bed and takes like Zebra, which is this old stuffy that Zoe has, and she notices that there's some seams undone on the belly, and she pulls out some paper. And she's like, "Oh, I don't know, this is morally wrong." But she like, for every single time I say like in this video, I'm gonna have to do 10 push-ups, and by the end of it, I'm gonna be ripped. Reads the papers, obviously. And it's letters in diary form, the ones that we were getting from the murderer's perspective, addressed to Zoe. And they're like saying like, "I love you so much, Zoe. Like, we need to do this. I have a plan how we can be together. It's gonna take some sacrifices. It's gonna take some time, but we're gonna be together and it's going to be perfect. I came up with all of this." And she like hides the stuff and she's like, "Oh my god, Edward Fosca wrote these letters to Zoe. I fucking knew it. I'm gonna do something about it." So when Zoe comes back in, she tells her, "We need to leave." And Zoe tells her, "Look, we cannot leave because I feel like I know where he hid the knife." And she tells her the story where apparently Zoe was one of the maidens at first, and she's like, "I only went once, I didn't want to go," but she's this little shy baby. She didn't want to go, but once they like made her, and they made her participate in the Elusinian Mysteries. Like, he made them drink the kykeon, like that was spiced with some kind of hallucinogenic drug or something. She remembers that they were like naked, the other girls were naked dancing in the woods, that he was kissing her, like telling her that he loves her, and that it was incredibly foggy in her mind, and then she just like woke up in her dorm and she doesn't remember anything else. So she says that she remembers that during the ride, they were in this copse in the woods with like old columns and stuff, and he pulled out the knife and kind of mimed stabbing her, and then he put the knife between some rocks and left it there. And she says, "I think he used that knife, and I'm sure that it's still there because it's all very ritualistic." And Mariana's like, "Okay, great, take me there." because the college is on a river, they have these like little rafty boats. They're called something in the book, but I don't even remember. So Mariana and Zoe go on one of these rafts, and Mariana is constantly thinking about the letter that she read, and she's like so afraid for Zoe. She wants to talk to Zoe about the letter, ask her. When they get to the cops, you already know what's gonna happen, right? At this point, I was just sitting there like, ah! Zoe gets her to the columns, and it's like a little closed off area. She pulls out the knife from between the rocks, and she's like, ha, I knew it. And then she turns on Mariana with the knife like that. Mariana's like, girl, what are you doing? So Zoe tells her that I did it. I killed them, and I would have killed the rest if you stopped poking your nose in it, because that was the plan that me and Sebastian made, your late husband, because we were lovers since I was like 16. And she tells her the story that like when she was like 16, she and Sebastian had sex for the first time in like the orchard in Greece where Mariana used to live. And Mariana's grandfather caught them once, so Sebastian had to kill him. And it was like in the beginning of the book somewhere that like, oh, at one point like the grandfather died. That's it. They didn't mention that he was killed or anything like that. So we don't even know how that happened. It's just kind of glossed over. So Sebastian had to kill the grandfather, and they wanted to be together, but because he was like with Mariana, they decided that they were gonna kill Mariana for her money, because she inherited all this money from the grandfather. If he just killed her, obviously all the suspicion would immediately be on the spouse. So they came up with this plan where he was going to kill these girls, these maidens, and make it so like Edward Fosca was doing it. They completely framed him. Zoe underlined those lines in his books. She sent the post. Right, excuse me everyone, welcome back. My camera died, so I took Alice for a walk while it charged. So the light changed and my face changed. So, moving on. I'm a little bit calmer now because I'm tired. So I'm gonna yell a little less, I think. So, Zoe's there with the knife, trying to kill Mariana, telling her how Sebastian actually came up with this whole thing. They were gonna kill these girls to frame Edward Fosca, and then he was gonna do it. And Zoe was just gonna be there like the, you know, innocent girl that doesn't get killed before Fosca gets captured. And then he dies, and she like blames Mariana for it, obviously, because Mariana wanted to go on this trip, and he died because of her. So she's like gonna kill Mariana now. And I'm so mad about this book. I literally want to set it on fire in this video. Basically, what happens next? Zoe tries to kill Mariana, and this guy, Fred or Ted, he shows up out of the blue because I was so angry while recording that I forgot to mention Fred or Ted by this point already proposed to Mariana. She rejected him, and he was kind of sad about it, obviously, and he acts a little bit unhinged about his supposed love, but yeah. He like followed Mariana because he thought she was in danger, so he follows her and he sees Zoe attack her. He tries to save Mariana, but Zoe stabs him. And then like Mariana overpowers Zoe, and Zoe gets stabbed with her own knife, and she like in that moment her like mind breaks, and she completely reverts to like a childhood state, and she starts to like sob and cry. So she's no longer any threat. They call like police and everything. Ted survives, or Fred survives, and that's it. Like the end of it. Mariana like moves on. She starts to think that maybe she can go out with Fred or Ted, because, you know, like her whole life was a mess and a lie. And Zoe is in Broadmoor, and Theo is actually her doctor. So at the end, like the book ends with her like going to see Zoe, and that's it. Because like she doesn't want to see her, but Zoe constantly talks about her to Theo, and she wants to see her, and she like feels like deep down in her soul, Theo says she still loves you. So at the end she goes to see her, and that's just the end. I'm so mad at this book. Like, first of all, none of that made any sense. Like, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna say that the plot didn't make any sense, because in thrillers that's often the case, because it's a thriller. We're coming up with the improbablest scenario for something crazy. Like, I'm one of the people whose favorite thriller is Behind Her Eyes. I shouldn't say that it doesn't make any sense. So that's not my problem. My problem is that why they went to Naxos for the holiday, Mariana and Sebastian, because they wanted a baby and she couldn't get pregnant. So her doctor recommended, like, go on a holiday. Maybe it'll help you before you, like, start treatment. So they go on this holiday and he ends up drowning. My question is, if he wanted to murder Mariana, oh, you know what? I did not turn on my sound recording. Be right back. Yeah, I'm back. So, if he knew that they were going to kill Mariana, why was he trying to get her pregnant? Like, to get a baby with her? And I understand that it could have been, like, part of his plot to, like, seem like the perfect husband so she doesn't suspect anything and doesn't think that there's something wrong and just, you know, like, play the part. But what if she got pregnant? What if they actually, like, had a baby together? Would he have still killed her and they would have, like, kept the baby for him and Zoe in their little fucked up family? Is that it? Because it's never addressed. We, like, read his diary, the letters that he wrote to Zoe, and it's never addressed. If he said, like, oh, if she gets pregnant, we'll just keep the baby. Or if he said, like, we're trying to get pregnant, but, like, what she doesn't know is that, like, I got a vasectomy. Or whatever, you know, like, just some reason why he's not afraid of this. Why is this never addressed? The second thing that really, really bothered me is the fact that in the end, when it turns out that Zoe was the killer, like, the police officer comes and, like, they reconcile with Mariana and he's like, okay, fine, you know, like, I'm sorry. And he tells her that they fired Edward Fosca because it turns out that he was sleeping with all of them, with all of these maidens. So she was at least right in this. What really bothered me about that is that that was the end of it. The police officer just says, the inspector just says, they fired him because turns out he was sleeping with all of them. That's it. Topic closed. We're never talking about it again. My problem is that why was it glossed over like that? He was talking to them, to his students, to these sensitive minds who looked up to him like to a god because he was so smart and charismatic and showed them this other world of beautiful literature. They looked up to him and he used them. He gave them this ritual, this, like, mockery of the ritual to fog their minds with bullshit, with nonsense, just so that he could take advantage of them. That could have been a conversation. That could have been addressed. It could have been explained, for example, by Clarissa, who's a senior professor, knows about ancient Greece. She could have explained that, like, oh yes, the ritual that he did, the rite that he presented, like the Elusinian Mysteries, was total bullshit and nonsense. And he just did that to fog the minds of these young women, to use them for his own nefarious means. Why was this not addressed? I feel like the writer wanted it to be a conversation. He wanted to show it like, oh, look, this man was bad because he did this and that. But he didn't unravel all of these things that he set up. He just threw in a bunch of little facts, and we were supposed to gather this picture together, and, like, an important opportunity was left out, and that pisses me off. Then the whole thing of, like, Zoe and Sebastian being lovers for, like, 10 years, like, almost 10 years. Look, I know that people can be delusional. I know that, like, it's possible that Mariana could not have noticed it. But to me, that just is some kind of next level bullshit. Oh God, I'm so mad about this book. I'm so mad about it. I don't know, like, I don't think that I'm going to put myself through another one of his books, unfortunately. It's just, who am I kidding? I mean, look at me saying that I'm not going to put myself through another one of Alex Michaelides' thrillers. Because you know what? Next year when he comes out with something, I'm going to go, oh, that looks interesting. But what I'm going to promise to myself is that I'm not going to spend any money on it. Like, if it's going to be on script, I'll listen to it, among others. But I'm not going to, like, buy it and spend any money on it and be excited about it. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Please let me know what you thought of this book if you read it. If you will read it, if you haven't read it already. If this review, for some reason, made you want to read it. Like, Honestly, that could be fun because a few times I saw awful scathing reviews of books and I was like, gotta get me some of that. Let me know what you thought of this book, if you read it or if you haven't read it. Let me know anything and everything. If you want to yell at me in the comments, you're welcome to do that. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. I'm gonna go have some chamomile tea. Slavo Green.